You tuned in last night. You knew where we were going today with our in-depth coverage. Today was one of the wildest State Department of Education meetings since State Superintendent Ryan Walters ever took office nearly 2.5 years ago. 3 board members were furious, saying the controversial new social studies standards they voted on last month were changed after the vote.
For over an hour, state school board members appointed by Governor Kevin Stitt argued with State Superintendent Ryan Walters about last February's vote on the state's newly proposed social studies standards.
No, I disagree with you. I think they play a significant role.
Are they voting on it?
That is up to their discretion.
The answer is no, they're not.
So your argument here that you're putting forth today is the legislature isn't doing their job? Is that what I'm hearing from you?
My point has been from day one, the process is not a good process.
The debate follows comments made by the governor on Wednesday, believing they were illegally edited after receiving board approval.
It's been showed to me from the board members that they were emailed a copy of those standards, but then there was a different standard that was sitting on the desk that they actually voted on.
There may have been some comments that weren't 100% accurate, but I wouldn't say that's new to the Department of Education.
Walters denied these claims and openly accused the board members of lying. Those members say they felt deceived after voting to approve something that was possibly changed without them knowing.
That was a misled, so I feel deceived on that because here we are still talking about the standards, and that time frame could have come and gone, and we could have reviewed them, and I think this whole issue would have gone by if we would have just slowed the process and let us understand what was in there.
And here's how and why we changed it. So can you produce those?
I mean, first of all, it's completely irrelevant part of the conversation.
I don't think it is.
You're looking at the individual that made the decision on what's in the standards. I'm right here.
Walters' office gave us this handout, which gives what they say the final edits were for the standards. They show they received edits the day before the board voted on them in February with input from public comments, something the board members also questioned.
I can't make you read. Listen, I can't make you read. There was no inaccuracies in the process as we gave you information. Can we all agree that that's what happened, and this fake controversy that there was an old switcheroo around here is completely bunk? Can we all agree to that?
I think to say what you just said and then call it a fake controversy is disingenuous.
Okay.
It is a controversy because the changes were not known to the public or the people that were involved in developing the baseline standards, and they feel there was a bait and switch.
The new standards are supposed to reach classrooms this fall and are still on track to be in place next school year. While the board did not vote to take back the standards from state lawmakers for another look, concerns about the standards being legal and other possible delays risk leaving districts and teachers uncertain about what to teach. Covering news that matters, Devin Lyon, Fox 23 News.
Another contentious part of the meeting was that's usually a simple procedure for public bodies. It was the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Now, minutes are the official account of what previously and officially took place. Board member Ryan Dethridge says he was written down incorrectly in the official minutes as not only supporting the standards, but also making the motion they be approved. Dethridge was one of those who wanted more time and a special meeting. He clearly does not want to be on the record as supporting the standards.
I make a motion to deny the minutes based upon the information that is in there is inaccurate. I did not approve or recommend the standards. Page 4, sir.
Yes, sir.
Item 1, underneath item 1. It says board member Dethridge moved to approve the recommendations or request. I think the media would support that. And again, this morning, as we discussed, I did not move for that. Matter of fact, I was just the opposite.
House and Senate Democrats held a news conference yesterday insisting the standards be sent back to the State Board of Education so the new members can view them further. They have issues also with additional religious instruction that's included in them, and also parts that ask students to debate the validity of the 2020 presidential election. Democrats in the Senate filed a motion to formally reject the standards as well, but the clock is ticking on action for that action to be taken.
These standards are so extreme, they make it impossible for teachers to use regular, mainstream textbooks to educate their students. They are not only out of touch with the needs of our classrooms, but they're a step backwards. creating more division and more confusion instead of understanding. This year, the legislature will allocate millions of dollars to provide new social studies textbooks for our schools. And local school districts will also chip in their own local funds for textbooks. We should not be spending taxpayer money to fund the propaganda of election deniers or teach their conspiracy theories.
Only one state lawmaker was actually in the board meeting today. Enid Republican Representative Chad Caldwell, who sits on the House committee that determines where education funding goes. He says he came to see the concerns from the board members himself, and afterwards he left feeling everything was fine. It was just a misunderstanding between the board and the superintendent.
After review, it became very clear that the standards that the board received were the standards the board voted on, and the standards the board voted on were the standards that were sent to the legislature. And I think any claim otherwise, quite simply, just isn't factual.
Now, obviously, the Republican supermajority is in charge of the legislature, and previously they said between the budget, which they are behind on, the financial problems at the State Department of Mental Health, and hundreds of bills, there is no desire to do anything more with these standards. Then Governor Stitt spoke out against these standards, and Senate Pro Tem Lonnie Paxton said today claims that there may be open meetings violations are certainly something to chew on and to possibly take action on.
The issue on the social studies standards is, I've read through the standards, some of the complaints I've got, I've actually pulled the areas of the standards, and I don't agree that it's enough to send them back based on what's in those standards. But I am concerned about the process. There's a transparency issue, the fact that everything we just talked about here earlier, that does concern me. And so that's what we're looking into. And so we have until Tuesday in order to decide whether we're putting it on the floor or not.
And then there was a bill making its way through the state capitol that would give school board members, local and at the state level, the power to put things on the agenda. You may remember this.
If 9 people want something and one person is keeping that from even being talked about, I think that's a problem. That's not really a board.
Is really about just a process we need to fix, that we have a state school board, and therefore the state school board should be able to have input on what goes on the agenda.
That bill to give board members more power passed with bipartisan support out of the State House, but tonight we can report it's dead for now. The bill did not get a hearing in a Senate Education Committee in time for a critical deadline. We are told there are talks to maybe bring the language back into another bill, but we will just have to keep watching legislative session.